to the Shades of Entrepreneurship, where we interview entrepreneurs to inspire the future entrepreneur. I'll be your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. So grab a drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. My next guest is a Titan 100 CEO and widely recognized behavioral solutions architect who helps growth-minded leaders create an exponential future by developing quantum leap growth mindset. Please welcome the executive chairman and founder of DNA Behavioral International, Hugh Massie. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. This is your host, Mr. Gabriel Flores. Today, I'm here with Hugh. How are we doing? He's the executive chairman and founder of DNA Behavioral International. Hugh.
Delighted to be here with you, Gabriel.
Yeah, and me, we're actually talking. Hugh's calling in from Atlanta, Georgia, hot Atlanta. I was actually out there earlier this year for a conference, and we're talking about how actually beautiful and diverse, and not only importantly, more importantly than that, but the food out there, how good it is. So, Hugh, how are we doing?
Yeah, really good. I'm hot because I'm in Hotlanta.
As we were saying. So Hugh, give us a little introduction. Please provide a little background. Who are you? And then we'll get into your business.
Yeah, so probably the audience has already figured out, Gabriel, that I'm not from Atlanta originally. I am from Sydney, Australia, is where I was born, but I've lived in Atlanta for the last 20 years or so. I think as you were alluding to before, Atlanta is sort of that hidden gem out there in the world that not many people realize actually how good a place it's to live. Certainly, within the confines of the United States. So I love it here. But I suppose we sort of want to get to how I got here. But my career started as a CPA. That's in American terms. Australian terms, chartered accountant. I was an auditor, then became a tax specialist. I worked in Southeast Asia for 4 years in that journey. But then at around 30 years old, I decided that corporate life, working in a big accountancy firm, was not going to be for me. I was a bit of a caged up tiger and I needed to go out there and do something, as I call it, on the street, which is really starting an entrepreneurial journey. The one thing I knew when I started was that I wanted to create some sort of business that gave people a very personalized experience in wealth management. And, at the time, and I think it's changed today, but we're still working on it. It was very one size fits all, and pushing a product at you, not really understanding you as a person. I think not dealing with the complexities of it very well. And so it was, and I was always interested in money, investments, doing deals. So I thought, yep, that's what I would do. But I think, as my boss said when I was leaving Arthur Andersen, he said, Hugh, you're leaving us, but you haven't really arrived at your new thing yet. And I think, it was quite a poignant statement and that he made, quite a good observation. I think he knew, I was ready to leave, although he didn't want me to, but I hadn't figured out what my real thing was. And maybe, and I say that because I know that, Gabriel, we're talking to, entrepreneurs today. Not everybody fully knows that when you start the next thing. And so anyway, after a few months, I figured out that it would be a wealth management business. I went and got licensed. I also, at the time, I did an MBA. I did my diploma in financial planning. So I was, I was pretty highly qualified. And, my accounting experience was pretty good too. I started to meet people. I started to get clients and I built business up. But one day, about 5 years into it, 4 years into it, a friend of mine asked me, Hugh, she said, you don't seem really entirely happy with what you're doing. What are you really passionate about? And I said, I want to help people all over the world become financially self-empowered. And I realized pretty soon after that, the fact that I just said that out of my subconscious, never having thought about it like that before, I need to do some work on this. And so I went and thought about it, reflected on it, and knew that, okay, if I'm going to help people all over the world become financially self-empowered, this is not going to happen from running a wealth management business based in Sydney. It's a very local thing. Still a good thing, but it's just not going to be it. And so I started working on that. I looked at my day journal, and here I had, lo and behold, been writing about human behavior for quite a few years, including when I was in the CPA firm. And that's where I realized that what I was doing was creating customized experiences for people by figuring out who they were. I wasn't using a process. And so I knew how to customize the language, the communication. I could figure out who could take tax risks, not take tax risks. That's sort of approach I was intuitively doing in the wealth management business. So I realized that this is about human behavior. And what I also noticed was that when people were under pressure, they would behave differently to when they were in a socialized sort of setting. There was this behavioral flip going on. I needed to know what that was. And lo and behold, as soon as I got to that point, a woman came into my office one day to help me with some recruiting, and well, that's what she thought she was coming in to see me about, as on the referral from her son. But actually, she was an industrial psychologist, and we started talking about my ideas about human behavior and money, and the fact that I thought people had this hardwired behavior deep down that didn't always show up on the surface, and that's what must be causing people to have this behavioral flip. Now, I wasn't getting that from reading it in books. I was not a trained psychologist. And she said, that is absolutely true. And here's how this works. When people are aged up at that time, people are aged 3 years old, they are 85% hardwired. That is the true natural instinctive person. That's where the first reactions come from. And people can't really change that hardwiring very easily. You can, with consciousness, learn to adapt to different situations. You can't change it that easily, but through your life, you have other experiences. They shape you a bit as well. I thought, okay, so what I really need to be able to do, I said to Carol, what I need to be able to do is to scientifically measure what people's natural hardwired behavior is, and how's that going to affect and understand how that affects how they deal with money. That took me on the journey of coming to America 40 times in 4 years, basically every month, to validate a system that we have today. And that was really the genesis of the DNA behavior system and the business. And because I wasn't so passionate about wealth management, that I sold that off and made this my day job, to basically build a behavioral sciences business that measures people's talents, how they deal with money. And, today we are a leader in the area of behavioral finance made practical, probably more to the point. There have been lots of research studies on this area, but the research scientists have not taken the research to practicality in terms of how do you know this specifically for each person. That's what we do.
Man,
so here I am now talking.
Yeah, and I'm gonna take a step back a little bit, because one of the things you said that I think was very interesting, specifically, was you knew corporate America wasn't your thing, or corporate industry wasn't your thing, and so you wanted to get into an entrepreneurial endeavor.
Yeah.
And then I think this is where a lot of entrepreneurs struggle as well, where they feel stuck. They have the golden parachute to retirement, right? They got the 401k, employee match, all these things. And then one of the things you also mentioned is you went back to your journal, your daily journal, to get inspiration about, I know I want to start a business. I just don't know what I want to do and what are my core competencies. How did that transition, going through that journal? When was that aha moment for you? Kind of sounds like, reading through that journal, but what was it in that journal that really made you say, you know what, I think I should actually pivot away from this wealth management and focus on the behavioral health?
Yeah, I think that if we just unravel that a little bit more, because you've cottoned on to some of the big point. I think the first thing was that I realized that when I was in the large corporation, if you want to call it that, in the corporate life, that I was a bit of a caged up tiger, and that I think I was not passionate. I was not as passionate about the tax work that I was doing as perhaps I should be, and I wasn't loving the environment. And I think that it's easy to say, "Oh, is that the firm's fault?" No, it was Hugh developing and growing and becoming, if you want to call it, the man I am or am supposed to become. My identity was growing. And so I always like to look at it that, I had a great experience where I was, but maybe it wasn't right for me for the next stage of my life. And now I know more about my behavioral style. I can absolutely see why. I'm pretty strong on risk taking, fairly single-minded, etc. Maybe with more coaching and development, could have been made to work for me being there. Yes, maybe. But I think, as I said to somebody on the golf course the other day, I probably would have left anyway at some later point. It would have got too much for me. So I think that temperament-wise, I was ready to go. What I hadn't figured out is what to do. But I was lucky enough I was not married. I had some money of my own that I was able to, withstand, if you want to call it, being hungry for a little bit, or I was not going to be hungry if I didn't make everything work day one, right? Whereas some people have got a family, they've got debt, and they've got to make their entrepreneurial venture work inside 3 months or they're toast. I wasn't in that place. And that was also a point of leaving. I think that if I distill it back, I've always said to people that being able to have my freedom was a reason to be was a reason to be an entrepreneur, and that it does provide you with freedom, and no one's going to fire me, right? So there's lots. I think that was the big reason. It wasn't about, well, I can just make more money in doing something else. It was about my freedom. It was about building my own identity. I started the wealth management business because that's something I knew I would be good at from a competency point of view. The tax experience is something that's relevant for all of that. I was good at consulting with clients. But you're right, is that where the real switch came to the venture that I have today came from looking at the day journal, taking all the notes and getting very specific around the fact that I had been looking at behavioral systems, human behavior, writing notes about it, what I thought worked out there, didn't work, what I didn't like about other approaches. I'd been documenting that. And then I'd looked at what I had in effect practically been doing in my accounting career and even in the early stages of the wealth management career. And I realized this is what I am good at, and this is how I can help do something for millions or billion. Now I would say billions of people, but millions of people. I could do it on a big, on a very wide scale globally, because it would be something that would become technologically driven. Technology was not as advanced then, but it was something that I could do. So I think that's the point. But I think where you're going, Gabriel, is that the makings of this was very early on.
Yes.
Customized experiences. To create a customized experience for the person, you absolutely need to know who they are at a pinpointed level. Yeah. It's not a guessing game. I started off with it guessing, which is what a lot of people think they can do. But really, at scale, it needs to be more measured than that.
Yeah, and I think you brought up a great point in regards to, understanding yourself, not only your customers, but understanding yourself as well is really important. Understanding core competencies? Because it sounds like, you went with your core competencies with, wealth management, but that wasn't your passion, right? You has a core competency, but it wasn't your passion.
No.
And so that's one thing I'd always encourage folks to think about. There are a lot of things you probably do on a day-to-day basis that is your core competency that you actually enjoy. It becomes at the golden hour, right? That moment where you're doing a task and you actually forget about what the time is because you're actually enjoying the thing that you're doing. So time just kind of goes by, right? Now, with that said, you need to find a way to monetize that because there are tasks. There's a lot of tasks that I do on a daily basis that I absolutely hate, right? And I would love to automate it or have someone else do it for me, right? Outsource it. And identifying what that value is to other people, how your core competency can provide value to someone else. And then if you have a passion for it, you can begin to see you can actually have a business model. And one thing I'll tell everybody, before you write a business plan, get a minimal viable product out there and see if people are willing to purchase it. If somebody is actually willing to reach into their back pocket, pull out their wallet and purchase the item or service that you're providing and you enjoy it, okay, now you have a business. Now you can begin to write a business plan. And to Hugh's point, now you can begin to scale it because then you kind of dive deeper into it. You start to learn about your customer flow. You start to learn about customer acquisitions. You start to learn about your SEO to drive people to your website. But you don't want to go down that rabbit hole until you have a minimal viable product, right? Something.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there's, Gabriel, a lot of things that we all can be 8 out of 10 at. You want to find the one thing you can be 10 out of 10 at.
Very true.
What's the business model around that? And as you say, by building a minimal viable product, you start to figure out whether you even like that business, right? Yep. I think there's two sides to it. You are pointing out, well, do the clients and people, will they buy into it? But do you actually want to do it? Right?
Very true.
And I think that, one of the points for entrepreneurs here is that, once you're at that stage of MVP or minimum viable product, I call that business plan A. You are probably not going to get to traction with something you really love that can really grow and be successful to you at about business plan G. Yeah,
very, very true. Very true.
And there's a lot of iterations and variations, and in a way you develop as well as the entrepreneur. Correct. As you're going through that as you're going through those cycles of getting to that place. And I've been at it now for 20 years or so with DNA behavior. Even last year we went through a really big process around 10x exponential growth is better than 2x optimization. And in some ways, we could have looked at our model and just continued to perfect it a bit more, fine-tune things. But if we really want to go for it, what do we strip out and allow ourselves to go 10x? And what does that look like? And how do we do it? And the principle being, if you've got the courage to do that, the 10x can be easier. And so we stripped away things, changed things. And in fact, we did that, and then we've done it again. And sort of, in a way, we're on the 100x. But I think that all comes from getting clarity, working out what you really love to do. Yourselves, are there the clients to do it? But we could have, I suppose what I'm trying to say is that we could have kept on a path of doing, providing a service that, that we like and enjoy, but actually it's not, and the clients are prepared to pay for it. But there's actually more out there to be done, right?
Yeah. If you're not getting comparatively better, you're getting competitively worse. So it's always important to kind of continue to look at where you can pivot. Now, this next question I'm going to ask you is a bit of a two-part question, because one of the things you mentioned, your DNA behavioral is now kind of a industry leader, right, in your field. So this is a two-part question. So one, what has been the key factors in your business success? And then based off of your business and all the information that you have now obtained, what are the key factors that hold people back in their own life and business?
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. I think one is we've always held true to, our values and what we believe, so that we've always wanted to, in terms of this self-empowerment, help people optimize their lives, financial success, business life, from knowing their talents, knowing their financial behaviors, the hard wiring. We've never bent on that, never bent on the methodologies. I think that, but we've always been prepared to be adaptable, to make changes in the business model as needed, or to adapt to a client. We've worked on customizing our solutions and the way things get delivered to meet varying client needs, and have always worked with differentiation. You talked about being a market leader. Yes, there's lots of personality systems out there, but really we're the only one that is standalone out there on how you deal with money. And that's been proven over and over again. Even, working with a large consultancy firm the last few weeks that have bought our solution at the enterprise level, it was because of the fact that we deal with money, gets us there. But we're also dealing with other behaviors too. So we've become a very interesting package for organizations. But I think that's the thing. We've always been, fair with clients. I think that's something that's important, that being fair, transparent, very reliable. So, meeting our own core values has been something that's important. And I think the other thing that we've done with this is, I've now put words around it, psychological safety, that when I always said that if somebody is going to use our system with a client particularly, but even with other employees, you've got to be prepared to go through it yourself and show who you are. And if you're not prepared as a leader, as a financial advisor, consultant, whoever it is, to be transparent about yourself, then don't use it. And I think that's a different level of leadership when you're prepared to do that, because if you're not prepared to put yourself out there and be open about who you are and have open conversations, be approachable, then not much is going to happen. And I always wanted psychological safety with what we do, not manipulation or people playing a game. And we've held true to all those things all the way along.
One of the things you mentioned was leadership.
Yeah.
How do leaders, how do their financial behavior impact an organization that they lead?
Very good. Very good question. That if I start this way and say that, we've all, as leaders, or for any leader, you've got a behavioral style that's wired into you. Comes with that, you've got an inherent perspective about money, inherent motivations that are wrapped up with money. You've got a drive to make it, save it, innovate with it, have experiences, whatever. Money is there in every decision you make. It's there in every waking moment and sleeping moment. And therefore, every decision you make in the company, the culture that you set, comes with it, comes with it is your attitude to money, or it will reflect or mirror your attitude to money. Optics, every person can look at a situation differently. You can look at an expense. Did somebody, did your head of sales go and entertain a group of people? And one person will look at it as lavish, and the other, and why did we do that and spend all that money? And another person will look at the sales number that came in because of it, and so that was a good thing to do. Or we've innovated a new product that's now moves us apart in the market, from a good perspective, but it cost us quite a lot of money. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? But money is wrapped up in all of that, and it goes in. How you as a leader stand up and handle money is then going to be reflected in how you handle the reports below you and all the way through the organization. And I think you can see it, particularly with some of the, Boeing, the aircraft company, is a great example
Very great example.
of financial behavior. Boeing built its reputation on being a safety first company, building
Very true.
the best aeroplanes that were safe in the sky. And then they did a merger deal with McDonnell Douglas. The Boeing leadership was there for about a year. A year later, the McDonnell Douglas leadership cleaned house, moved aside the staid, boring Boeing people that were safety first, and it became all about results and numbers and financial behaviors. And then the culture changed. And then when people started to raise corners, got cut on safety issues, people lower down raised concerns, they get fired. There's manipulation with the regulatory authorities, blah, blah, blah. And now we've got planes falling out of the sky. And I don't think there's a day where Boeing gets good press. And it's a disaster.
It really is.
And it's very sad. And frankly, it's quite scary in a lot of ways. I don't do as much flying as I once did, but it's quite scary getting on some of the airplanes now, wondering, well, gee, am I going to be on the plane where the door falls out or the ABCD happens?
Yeah, that's very true. And it's funny you mentioned that because, Boeing, I'm here in the Pacific Northwest. Boeing is a big Washington company. Alaska Airlines, you mentioned the door falling off. That happened actually right over my home. We actually got a notice to look around our home for debris that fell out of that plane that with the door came open. Because, one thing I'll tell the entrepreneurs, and you brought up a great point. Once Boeing kind of sold off, they kind of lost their kind of true north, essentially. And that's true also for smaller businesses and entrepreneurs. Yeah. If you're going for funding for venture capitalists, you're essentially selling your business to someone else. And once they kind of come in, they may begin to dictate who's on the board, who runs the business. And then their core competencies, right? Your mission statement may begin to fall to the wayside because, again, their goal is not to, scale your business to make people happy. Their goal is to scale their business to make the shareholders happy. And the best way to make shareholders happy is make money.
Yeah. And I think that, that given that many startups, smaller businesses at some point take on outside capital of some sort, the type of capital you take on and the terms of it can very much shape the business. And I think a lot of people take on, the formalized venture capital, private equity, probably too early in their journey, and they're not ready to manage it and don't understand that in actual fact, it's glorified debt because those lenders, and I've been on that side of it too, want their money back. And so you've got to understand what that's going to do to the business. Are you the type of leader that can actually handle it? And I think the other side that I've talked a lot about as well is, from a financial behavior perspective, is the investor, the VC investor doesn't always know who they are investing in. They think they do. They've been inspired by this person and gee, they've got a great business now. It's in artificial intelligence or doing something in health. We better get in there. And they push the money at the person. But not only is the business model not ready for it, neither is the human being receiving it. And they don't realize that this person they might be a gun salesperson, but they're not really capable of running a business beyond a few $1 million of revenue, right? Because it's not them. And then it's not saying that they're a bad person. Maybe they should still have a very key role in the business, but it'd be different. And I think there is one of the things I've been addressing is there's a lack of transparency all around there on both sides of the fence. But this process could be a whole lot better for everybody if done through, people first and understanding what are the financial behaviors that are there. So, and this happens at the private equity level as well, where, they're very sophisticated, businesses are bigger, but they're pretty sophisticated deals. the CEO and founder might have done a great job to get the business to the level of private equity, but are they the right person to handle the investors and the investment money and really make it work? A lot of the case, it's no, and you see that written up all the time. You see the results of it, and it is about people.
Yeah. Hugh, I think this is a great time to actually plug the nonprofit. I actually started a nonprofit, Latino Founders. Again, folks, you can go out and in your community and find a lot of nonprofits that will help support the scale of entrepreneurship. We actually have a free business accelerator program. We actually had 33 applicants this year, some from Palo Alto, from Illinois, from New York. So we had a pretty diverse group of individuals applying. And the goal behind this is to really create a 12-week immersive business accelerator program that's very business agnostic. So we can really talk about all these different operations, financing, scaling, marketing, very organically. But then we'll set you up with a mentor. We set you up with a mentor to really help talk about scaling your business, what things work, what things do not work. But the best part about it is actually our pitch competition. So we actually have a Pitch Latino competition, and we have you, the entrepreneur, come and pitch your business idea to the community. We had last year about 250, 300 guests. Those attendees will then vote live right then and there on who they believe the winner is. And then the winner actually receives grant funding. So as he was mentioning, venture capital is basically a glorified loan. Grant funding, that's not a loan. You get that money. You do with what you need to it. You can put it towards marketing. You can put it towards your sales. But the beautiful thing about the pitch as well is you're going to get insight because we have VCs that attend. So you're going to get live insight from them as well to kind of let you know, hey, you're kind of going down the right path, or it might be time to pivot.
Yeah, and I'd love it if in the not-for-profit environment you're talking about, Gabriel, perhaps that we get a DNA discovery done on every person that's seeking a grant, and that will provide an extra layer of insight for the person's giving the grant. Because do you want to give the grant to somebody that, yeah, they might have talked a good game, but they're not going to be able to really do it, or as you say, they've done a great presentation, great idea. The person giving the grant wants to be involved, but the person's going to need coaching, and who do they bring on their team? This will soon tell you that. And I think it would be, that would be, something I'm prepared to offer today, for you and then for anybody listening. Why not know this and know the truth and make decisions around the truth? It will save a whole lot of trouble later on.
I love it. We'll definitely connect a little bit more, discuss that a little bit more after this show to definitely build that relationship. Because I think, again, knowledge is power, right? Now, you've worked with, we're talking to entrepreneurs. We have a lot of entrepreneurs listening. What would you say is one of the most common financial errors that either businesses or entrepreneurs make that you have noticed during your work experience?
Yeah, so from a financial decision-making point of view, I think that probably, well, I know what the winning stroke is it's around how you invest in innovation. And I think that at the end of the day, you could spend too much money on innovation. You do need to innovate and innovate regularly, particularly in today's dynamic world with AI. But I think it can be done with a lot lower cost and get, as you said, get MVPs into the market at lower cost. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs spend too much money on the wrong things. They spend too much money on the wrong people. You don't have to pay as much in the environment for people as you think you do. There's the gig economy out there. There's offices. There's the way you travel, the way you eat and live. I think that they're all things that can become a threat to the business, and you need to be able to run a relatively tight ship, but be smart as well. You do the wrong things in some of those areas.
I agree. Now on your business, DNA Behavioral, how do you help individuals and groups improve their decision making?
Yeah, so the first thing that we, we do it at a number of levels, of course. Improving your decision making firstly comes down to knowing who you are and what your strengths are, but also on the other side what your struggles and what the biases that you might have are. I think that also everybody talks about your intuition being very powerful. And people say, well, my gut says I'm to do X. And I absolutely think that the intuition is powerful, but it's got to be tuned first. And I think that in making decisions, you should get more data points before you use your intuition. In fact, the data points will help you make the intuitive decision. In its rawest sense, intuition is only 28% accurate. If that's just your initial reaction, I think that getting more data points, check yourself before you wreck yourself, will help a lot. But I don't want anyone to hear this to say that your intuition isn't powerful. It is. I absolutely rely on mine. And it's very, relatively very tuned. But I also look for data points. I think being patient is important because you don't know, with your intuition, the timing of things. It might be a little off certain days. You just got to be very careful with that, depending on how you interpret intuition. So I think it's a balance. Gabriel is what I would be saying. But also, if you're sitting around the table with a group of people, understand at the table who's the authority bias there, who's just going to say yes because that's the easiest thing to do and then duck their head, who's extremely anchored. So understanding who's around the table with you, who's got to be persuaded the right way, not manipulated, but persuaded the right way, I think is important. Getting people to, come up with their own decisions and from their experiences, data points is important. So laying the table for the decision-making process is really important.
Yeah, very true. And I think that's true also when, folks are identifying employees to work for your business as well, making sure you have the right people on the bus. I always say there's three types of employees, right? There's the engaged employee. Everybody knows the engaged employee, right? It's a person that comes to work, shows up, does everything they've been asked and even sometimes more. And then you have the RIP and the cave employee. Now the RIP employee is the retired in place. Right. They come to work, they kind of do the bare minimum. They're just looking for retirement. They're just there. And I'm okay with the RIP because I know I can get them to becoming an engaged employee, to your point, just making sure kind of leading them in the right direction. Now, the one person that's very difficult is the cave employee. They're constantly against virtually everything. The food sucks. The parking's horrible. I don't like my boss. Those people are difficult because when you hire a new member of your team, it's that cave employee that's going to be training them. And what are they going to be training them? How bad the food sucks, how bad the parking is, how much they hate their boss. So making sure you get the right people on the bus is just as important. And they have to believe in your mission as well, right? When you craft a mission statement, it shouldn't just be a statement, but it should also be a goal. Right? What are you trying to accomplish with this? Nike, everybody's an athlete. Okay, well, they want to accomplish the feeling that every individual that puts on an article of their clothing feels like an athlete, right? It's not just a mission statement, it's a goal.
Yeah, I think that absolutely the company itself has got to have a very engaging culture, which is what you're referring to. They've got to have a very clear goal. And then all the roles have to be clearly defined. Now, of course, that changes as the business grows and develops. But the more clarity you can provide people of what's expected of them, that all helps. The way the leaders then show up each day is important. If you're the leader and you get emotional or you rough handle people, it's not going to last very long, and there's not much forgiveness really. Got the wrong teddy bear down there, in the ranks who's not properly engaged. They can poison it for everybody, and you can't have that. And some people start off as being the right person, but as life goes along or the business goes along, it's not right, then you need to be working on that. But I think one thing that's got clear, helping others do it, is, what are the talents required for a role, and then ensuring the person's got the right talents and passions. That's all important. Values are important. The organization can have its set of values and be clear about that, and the employee can come to the table with their set of values. But if they're clear about their values and they know who they are, I don't think you can sit there as the employer and say, I'm going to get them to change those values. That's either a fit or it's not a fit.
Correct.
And they could be the best person in the world, but actually their values aren't, and what's important to them is not a fit with your business. And that's something to figure out as early as you can.
Yeah, I completely agree.
And you shouldn't expect them to change their values, actually.
Yeah. And I would also encourage, don't set yourself up or your employees up for failure. And the best way to minimize and mitigate this is operational planning. Folks, I got to tell you, I think one of the difficulties of being an entrepreneur is actually letting go, to be honest with you. You built something, we work, I'm down in this basement 12 hours a day sometimes, grinding it out. Except there's so many operational things that I don't want to let go, because I created this essence of, okay, this is my quality standard. This is how I like to do things. However, if you create an operational playbook, you can begin to let things go, because now it's operationally sound. And you say, hey, if this issue pops up, this is what I want to resolve. If this issue pops up, this is how you resolve it, and making sure that when you're starting your organization, having those in place is very key. Because when you do, if you decide to go VC, or if you decide to sell your company one day, not only are going to look at your financials, but they're going to look at your operations as well. How well is this business operating? Because that's also a big thing of financial loss if it's done incorrectly.
Absolutely. And you've got to have the right people there in your team to do that, particularly if you're the founder.
Yep. Now, you've written a lot of books, and folks, for those that I'm going to have a list of these books on the Shades of Entrepreneurship newsletter. Great opportunity to plug the newsletter. Visit theshadesofe.com to sign up for this newsletter. Leadership, behavioral DNA, financial DNA, business DNA. So these are all ebooks, and I'll have them on the website. But one of the things that I really thought that really resonated with me that you do is you actually mentor boys without fathers. Now, tell us about that program, and why is it so important to you?
Well, it's important to me for a couple of reasons. One is I was a boy without a father. My father died when I was one. Wow. I've had a great life. My mother did a fantastic job for me, and in fact, while I was 1 year old, my brother was not quite born when my father died. And so that's a very, whichever way you want to look at it, it's a very shaping life event. It's one that I am grateful for, although I, of course, would have wished I had a father. I think, and the way I've talked to people about this is not to be the victim, but to be the victor. And to understand, and so what I learned on my life journey, a little bit from my mother, but also working with some of our clients, I did 6 podcasts. We do behavioral identity podcasts with people, and Gabriel, you could do it with me as well if you like. I'll reverse the tables, but I did 6 in a row with our clients about 2 years ago, and they were all a boy without a father, and one of them had done a doctorate in the traumatic impacts of it, and there are a number around obesity, social skills, talking later, depending on when it happens. The earlier it happens, the bigger these issues are, but also aggression and violence, ABCD. And as a boy without a dad, you can get yourself into a lot of trouble pretty quickly by the time you're 12, but also just have life challenges. And so we all agreed after that we would do something about this. So I pushed the barrow to set up the charity Boys Without Fathers so that we could help other boys. It's a big issue out there in terms of what these boys, if they're not helped, go and do or don't do, or what's wrong. So it's a big societal issue. It's obviously is a big issue for the families, and it's not saying that the girls aren't important in it, but the issues for the girls are very different, and perhaps have different societal impacts. And I can't talk about the impact on a girl. One, I didn't have a sister. I'm not a girl, and I know how big this issue is for boys, but I think it is really an issue for the families, and it's an issue for everyone. And so we are doing this work as well, for really any family where there's been a loss of a parent, there is a traumatic impact. But for boys, it's big.
Yeah. Yeah. And, folks, I think this is a good opportunity to remind folks to, not judge every book by its color. There's a lot of things that people are going through that we do not see. And I think too often in society, we have our iPhones and or have our headphones in walking around, and take a moment to look up from what you're doing and look at people and smile. You'd be surprised how that small smile would impact someone's day dramatically.
Yeah.
The last thing we can do is wake up every day, go to our closet, pick out the ugliest outfit, and then blame the world for what we look like. Right. We have to understand that everybody's going through something. Nobody's problem's bigger than everybody else's. We're all in this together. We are in a global economy, whether you like it or not. Everything that's done is on a global scale. A lot of the items you purchase are from a different country globally. And so understanding that everybody has different experiences, they have different backgrounds, they have different cultures and religions, and that's okay, because it's our imperfections as human beings is what makes this life so perfect, because there's so many things you can learn from so many other people.
Absolutely. And, I think you've said it really well there, Gabriel, and we've all got a set of challenges in some ways. And, it's a matter of how you want to look at those challenges and hurdles. And, life, we all develop in life at different times and in different ways. I'd say I'm pretty much a late bloomer. I'm hitting my straps now. And of course, I've got to make sure I live longer to benefit and enjoy that. But I think that's part of the journey, and that for entrepreneurs to realize that we don't all make it after 2 years or 5 years. Don't measure yourself against somebody else, because you don't know what they're going through, what they had to do to get there, or what the circumstances were. You don't know any of that. It's about your game. And more stress will come into your life if you start measuring yourself against somebody else and measuring how much you got in the bank, because there's always somebody that's got more.
Yes, very true. And folks, I got to tell you, it took me about 5 years for SLM Apparel for me to scale it and then close the doors, because I realized I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Right. And that's when I went back to Portland State, got my business degree, met my wife, went and got my MBA at Syracuse, and then restarted again. Okay, now I have the tool belt with some tools, and now I know how to use these tools. So let me begin to use them. But at the end of the day, it's getting out there and trying experience. Traveling is a really good way for you to learn quite a bit. Going to a different country where you do not know the language, you're going to grow immensely, because you're going to have to figure out how to do things in a way that you never knew how to do before. And that's a really, really good learning experience. Now, Hugh, you've been doing this for some time. You got a lot of experience. What advice would you give aspiring entrepreneurs, or as you mentioned, those caged up lions? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is have a big dream, and don't sell that short. And I knew as a child I had an entrepreneurial dream, to have a global business. I think that have that, and then start small and finish big. Don't go and try and fulfill the whole dream at once, because that's not realistic. This is a journey. Stick to your guns on what you absolutely believe in, and why you're doing what you do. Yes, there will be business plan A to business plan G, at least that. And then enjoy the ride. And even when there's a bad moment, look at it and say, okay, what's the silver lining in this? What did I learn out of it? And, maybe you hit a wall again. I've had a few disasters here and there, but I and bang the head against the wall. It's, nearly cost me a lot. But every time, actually, I was lucky that it happened when it did. And I saw it and moved on. And somehow I very soon after became bigger and better. And I think that's the thing with it. But you've got to have resilience to go on this journey, and so does your spouse and your family, right? They've got to come on it with you.
Yes, very true. And I could not have said it better yourself, because at the end of the day, you might be the entrepreneur working, but it's your family that's also a part of it, because it's the time away, the time on calls that they also feel that brunt.
Yeah, and they feel the brunt of your moods and mood swings and emotions. And so if you don't totally believe in what you're doing and have confidence in the future and believe in a bigger future, and that the future is going to get even bigger and bigger, and you've got an truly abundant attitude in that, then that will always be a problem.
Very true. And remember, folks, nobody starts at the finish line, right? Nobody starts, and nobody's perfect. In fact, the last person that was allegedly perfect walked on water, and look how the world treated that individual. So, think about that. And again, test things out. Ask people how things, if you have a minimal viable product, take it out to a roadshow, take it to a conference, take it to a pitch competition, and see if it works before you invest a lot of money to try to scale that business, because you may find out that MVP, you have a great idea, but no market for it. So make sure you have a market before you scale.
Yep. And don't die wondering.
Yeah, get out there and try it. Everybody else is trying it. Hugh, thank you again so much for being on the show. Is there any last words you'd like to say before we leave?
No, I don't really have anything else, Gabriel. I think we've really covered it. As I said, I think don't die wondering, and go out there and enjoy it, and live the dream.
Live the dream so we do not have to. I love that quote. Don't die wondering. Hugh, the executive director and founder of DNA Behavioral International, the behavior and money insight company. Again, folks, I'll have all this information on the Shades of Entrepreneurship website and newsletter. You can subscribe by visiting theshadesofe.com. You can also find us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn by visiting theshadesofe.com or simply searching The Shades of E. Again, you can subscribe to this, and please, if those are interested, I have a Patreon account. $5 a month will help support the podcast, which allows me to continue to bring on phenomenal guests for you. And again, please do everything you can to help educate each other and stay well out there. Thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you for tuning in to the Shades of Entrepreneurship. For more information, please follow the Shades of E on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or visit theshadesofe.com.